Now it is time to begin the formal parts of the debate. As I said before, the topic before this House is that society would flourish under the rule of women, and speaking for the proposition, please welcome Diane Smith-Gander.
Well, society is certainly flourishing in this room tonight. We're about to enjoy a debate that will be universally well-intentioned. I expect there will be learning. I expect there will be lots of laughter. We'll all grow as a result of this debate. We'll all develop as a result of this debate. I hope we will burst forth, bloom, blossom, and even run riot, because these things define flourishing. And sadly, our society is not doing these wonderful things. It's a real paradox that men are so poorly served by male rule. It's all very well to have the money and the power, but if you're not living long enough or freely enough to enjoy them. Germaine Greer said it well: the present condition of men is nothing to aspire to. Consider, Australians born in 2009 can expect to live until 84 if they're a woman, but only until 79 if they're a man. This gender-based distinction holds true in all 193 countries in the World Health Organization ranking this year. Now, don't be a man born in Morocco. The gap there is 10 years. In Australia, in 2010, 27 women per 100,000 population were behind bars, but 318 men found themselves in the same unenviable position. In the United States, it's 1,352 men to every 126 women. Men are also much more likely to be killed at work. 5.7 male occupational fatalities per 100,000 persons in the US in 2009 versus 0.6 for females. Men also die much more frequently from motor vehicle accidents, firearm incidents and homicide. It is just plain dangerous being a man in a male-ruled society. And sadly, male suicide rates are much higher than female. In Australia, 15.3 per 100,000 persons versus 4.8. Again, these gender-based distinctions hold true for all countries that keep records. All men have mothers. No mother would not want to change these dynamics for her son. So, where are we? This male rule of our non-flourishing society has been with us a long time, and it's not good for men. Some might say, modify male rule, make it more inclusive. But male rule shows no signs of being able to reinvent itself for the better in any acceptable time frame. Dads just aren't doing it for their daughters. As a Western Australian, I'm proud we granted women's suffrage in 1894. But it was not until the late 1940s that women in Italy received the vote. Women in Malaysia got it the year I was born, 1957. And women in Saudi Arabia are still waiting. Western Australia also delivered the first woman elected to an Australian Parliament. Edith Cowan took her seat in 1921. She's currently depicted on our $50 note in recognition. Actually, women do quite well when it comes to pictures on banknotes. I suspect it's because there's two sides to them. But almost 100 years after Edith took her seat, women are still underrepresented. 30% representation with only 20% of ministerial portfolios. But some good news. The number of female chairs of those top 200 boards I spoke about has doubled in the last 4 years. I chair one. I've got 9 female counterparts. Thank you. But doubling in 4 years has got us to that whopping 5% representation. That is a bit more than 1 new female chairman per year. So we'll get to mirror representation, 50%, by 2055. If I live that long, it will be my almost 100th birthday present. So, in the absence of male rule being able to change for the better, we need a paradigm shift to female rule. We tried other classes of rule, religious, race, birthright, none of which allowed society to flourish. We've now tried baby steps towards power sharing, and that's failing too. So female rule is the logical paradigm shift. Now, be very clear, I am not arguing at all that women are better than men. There are more than enough examples of women in power displaying behaviour vile enough to be worthy of any man. If Mary, Queen of Scots, had recognised this, she might have kept her head. But women do have a vested interest in taking the actions to make society flourish, as we are even more poorly served by men, poorly served than men by society. Opportunity is not equal for women. Consider pay equity, that startling little notion of equal pay for work of equal or comparable value regardless of gender. We don't have that in Australia. Instead, we have a persistent and now widening gap. Since measurement started in 1994, the gap has been stuck between 15% and 17%. This year, it hit a record high of 18.2%. Male rule may not be the causal factor, but it might as well be, as it has proved incapable of addressing the gender pay gap. But at core, my argument is we need a paradigm shift, a circuit breaker, a Whitlam moment, short, sharp and impactful. Let women who invented society and so understand it, women who have the biggest vested interest and the greatest gain should society flourish, let women rule. I bet if we asked Gough, would society flourish under female rule, he'd agree with me. His answer would be, yes, comrade, it's time.
Would you please welcome Helen Razor.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're not natural categories. Ladies and gentlemen, you're entirely socially constructed, so let's get that straight from the get-go. You do not exist. I mean, come on! Centuries of argument about human nature, and we still haven't listened to Aristotle, who says that humankind is by nature social. We are naturally social. Aristotle knows it, and so, of course, do proper scientists practising proper science and not that ideological Darwinism dressed up in a lab coat that says men are naturally drawn to the invention of the combustion engine, whereas women are much, much better at tastefully arranging cheese plates. So say that, or say that a lady would be a better leader than a man because of her biological sex, but you are being a little bit of an idiot. But there are a few idiots here tonight. There are optimists, though, and these optimists might tell you woman is a socially created category, but within her social category, woman has developed in the shadow of the culture some undervalued but marvellous skills. This is how the argument's going to go. While man has inhabited the public realm, woman, and in private and in servitude, learned humility, she learned nurture, she learned kindness. She developed these private qualities for which the public culture has no current use but are necessary to the flourishing of the state. So, let's agree that we are by nature social and that the social category of woman has been constructed in a way that gives her qualities that are quite distinct from those in socially constructed man. We then have to ask ourselves two questions, and the first is, do these qualities make women potentially better rulers? And then the second one is, do these qualities make women actually better rulers? The simple answer to the second empirical question is, of course, Margaret Thatcher. AKA no. Her womanly qualities were quickly exchanged for the love of the myth of trickle-down wealth, matched only by her fondness for union busting and calling single mothers costly harlots. The answer to this question is Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, who seems quite unsexed when it comes to the Ebola crisis, to which she offers scant aid. This woman's milk is turned to gall, and so it was in the bosoms of Golda Meir, Winnie Mandela, Madame Mao, and in women business leaders too. Yahoo's CEO, Marissa Mayer, famously forbade employees to work from home, even new parents, which is unwomanly enough, but nothing compared to the Lady Macbeth of Lockheed Martin, the CEO, Marilyn Hewson. The weapons whose production she oversees take the lives of civilians around the world, but notably in the Middle East. And when these citizens, like Reza Barati, flee Lockheed's armed drone, Lockheed's Hellfire missile, Lockheed's Lightning II Joint Strike Fighter, they're indefinitely held at facilities managed by Transfield Services, for which the first speaker is the CEO. So, just how you feminise industries like death and mandatory detention remains a mystery to most of us, but perhaps you can't. Perhaps these industries don't have a gender, and perhaps if we consider our first question, are women potentially better leaders of industry and government, we begin to see that there can be no gendered reform of rule. There is no improvement to be made in a network of intricate devastation that leads a 23-year-old Iranian architect away from his home to a miserable island where he is beaten to death by blows to the head. So who do we blame for the death of Barati? It was not down to the CEO of Lockheed, who made the weapons from which he fled. It was not down to the CEO of Transfield Services, who managed the site at which he was slain. It would be churlish and stupid to blame an individual for this atrocity. Then again, it would be churlish and stupid to blame a gender. And you can argue that this Western world was made by men, but you cannot argue that the world is intrinsically male. Even if we do agree that women are more caring, there's no guarantee that care and compassion are sufficient to undo the brutal work of centuries. Care and compassion are nice qualities, but they are globally ineffective. It doesn't matter that Oprah tells you that kindness can change the world. The world is not listening, Oprah. The world, whether it is ruled or is built by men or by women, goes about its business apace. The world has a non-human synthetic character that long ago exceeded anybody's nature or anybody's gender. Its chemical reactions are not human, and we can't just shout at them, "Behave like a woman!" The instrumental reason of a world that demands growth and requires the diminution of lives for smartphones and the death of young architects for votes is beyond gender and beyond even individual control. And it will stay that way unless we dare to imagine it taking a different course, one where we can not only admit where we're not natural, but that our world is not human. If we want a world that flourishes, we need to think beyond female empowerment. Equality of the sexes means nothing, or even less, if it fails to address the inequality that is the alpha and omega of our politely brutal West. Give all the Sheilas jobs on boards and in Parliament and cram the dying media full of inspiring role models like Beyonce in front of a great big feminist sign. Do you think this will give you a smartphone without blood? Do you think Lockheed will make greeting cards instead of drones? Do you think Manus Island will become a health spa? No. Will instrumental non-human violence end, or will it just take a mildly different form? Well, my dirty money is on the latter, because no human produced by this inhuman world, male or female, has half a chance of ending this shit unless they stop dreaming meekly of some Disney-fied equality and start fantasising broadly about true liberation.
Helen, I should point out one thing. You're rather unkind to Diane. She's not the CEO of Transfield Services, she's the chairman.
Oh, sorry.
The second speaker for the affirmative. Please welcome Kerry Chikarovsky.
Ladies and gentlemen, I need to take a breath. After a first speech like that, I sat there and I thought to myself, we live in two very different worlds. I live in a world which is gentle and kind. Yes, there are parts of that world which I can point to and say, no, that's not right. No, that's not good. Yes, that must be improved. Yes, we have problems. But in my world, most of the people in my world, whether they're male or female, they want to solve those problems. They want to work together to solve those problems. They want to be part of a great conspiracy of kindness. Now, not always does that work. Not always does that work. And tonight, I will explain to you when it works better. And I will use historical precedent to explain to you when women rule, how societies flourish. Now, if I asked you to go to Google and to Google the 10 most villainous rulers of the world, what names do you think would be thrown up? Come on, throw some at me. Quick. Yeah, no, not her. She doesn't even rate. Top 10, I said. But you're close on one. I'll get to one in a female one in a minute. Give me 4. Give me some names. Quick. Hitler, Stalin. I can't hear that. But mainly the people. Attila the Hun. Vlad the Impala's my favourite. He comes in at number 4. But what, Genghis Khan? Yes. But one of the ones that I don't think you would get, Pol Pot was there. But would anybody have told me, and I need to do this because I need to get the pronunciation right, would any of you disclosed Ranavalova of Madagascar? No, you wouldn't have, would you? Now, the reason I need to disclose this is because I know the words full disclosure and politician don't usually go together in New South Wales very well. But I thought if I was going to talk about the 10 most villainous, I should talk about this lady. Oh, I should also disclose at this stage, no, I can't remember never drinking a bottle of wine, and no, I don't write thank you notes because my writing is so bad, which has probably stood me in good stead. No, back to Ranavalova. Ranavalova of Madagascar. She actually makes my point about when women rule, the society flourishes, because she ruled like a bloke. She would have fitted in perhaps to your argument because she ruled like a bloke. This was a woman who during her reign killed more than 1 million of her subjects. She's the Queen of Madagascar in the 1800s. I reckon if you killed 1 million of your subjects in Madagascar in the 1800s, you probably took out 5, 10, maybe 15% of the population. You probably completely wiped out any opportunity to build your country. It's probably why when we talk about superpowers now, Madagascar doesn't come to your lips straight away, does it? So she makes the point, because she ruled like a man. She killed, she maimed, she tortured. But if you go back to Google and you Google Golden Age, you get 3 queens. A trifecta of queens, ladies and gentlemen. 3 queens. Any poker hand, that'd mean you'd normally win. 3 queens. And who are those 3 queens? Elizabeth I, Catherine the Great, and my favourite, Tamar the Great of Georgia. Again, probably not that well known, but she was a fascinating character. Now, the reason I raise those ladies with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because those women ruled, not did they just rule at a time of great prosperity, they created prosperity. They created cultures in which art and science were allowed to flourish. Now, the reason I bring these ladies to your attention, and I was going to talk about Margaret Thatcher, but I think I've run out of time. But let me say, just on a quick note, Margaret Thatcher, we will have a disagreement later about what she did for the UK and how it flourished. I knew we would. I knew we would. But these women, let me say to you, these were women, strong women, ruling in their own right, not with consorts, not with masses of male advisors who dictated to them what they did. And they ruled at times when the ideas that they were actually proposing were radical, they were unusual, and they, of course, were successful. And in their times, their societies, their communities, they flourished. They lived in golden ages because they were golden women with golden ideas. And let me say that when women with great ideas, compassion and intelligence rule their communities, nothing will stop them and women will rule. One final thing, because I've run out of time. All I've got to say to you, I just want to leave you with one thought. Julie Bishop. If Julie Bishop, no, sorry, not if, when Julie Bishop is running the UN, not only will society flourish, but the world will too. Thank you.
Please welcome Nicole Vincent.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, so like all good debaters, Emma prepared for tonight by having a good look through her sock and underpant drawer. And that's where she found these funky little numbers. In case you can't read the embroidery, the catchy slogan is "Men ruin stuff." We love these socks. But as much as we dig their florally separatist goodness, we don't think that they constitute a valid political philosophy. Yet "men ruin stuff" is central to the affirmative team's argument. Society would flourish under female rule. Why? Because men ruin stuff. Look, it says so in writing on Emma's socks. While we agree with our sister on the affirmative team that we desperately need more gender equity in politics, we suspect that they have fallen victim to what philosophers might refer to as the boy germs fallacy. Our case is simple. Emma Jane and I really only want to make 2 points. Point 1. We hazard a guess that few of you, that's men and women alike, actually endorse the radical claim that society would flourish under female rule. We don't think that you actually endorse the claim once you think about just how radical this claim really is. And we don't think that you would endorse what it would take to get there, to a society in which women rule, and to stay there. The second point is that we want what we think we all want is not special treatment, not ruling, but just equal treatment. So, Emma and I invite you to consider some other claims that we could have been debating tonight. 1. Society would flourish with more women in power, not under female rule. Here's another one. Society would be better with more women in power. And the last one is, even if women can't do a better job than men, it would still be better if there were more women in power. Notice that each of these claims gets increasingly more gentle, more modest, and more reasonable. But so what? This is not the claim that we were asked to debate. True. But looking at other claims helps Emma and I to get perspective, to get contrast, to see just how radical this other claim really is. So here's another way to see it, just how radical this claim is. Consider some components of this claim. So the claim again is, society would flourish under female rule. What exactly are we asked to endorse here? That everyone in society, once women and only women are in power, everyone in society would flourish. Would Tony Abbott, for instance, flourish under female rule? So consider Tony Abbott's comments back in 1979 that women would never approach equal representation in a large number of areas simply because their aptitudes, abilities and interests are different for physiological reasons. I don't think everyone would flourish under female rule, certainly not Tony Abbott. Would most people flourish under female rule? Would more people flourish than how many people flourish right now? In how long, when would they flourish? How long would it take? The first simple point we're making there in regards to the claim that society would flourish under female rule is just that really, how much of society? Everyone would flourish? Some reasons to doubt that not everyone would flourish, to think that not everyone would flourish. The second point has to do with the word flourish. So, to flourish is really one of the best states. So you grow, you thrive, you prosper, you realize your full potential. Emma and I think that a flourishing society is an impossibly high standard to ask of women. Impossibly high standard. It's not a standard that we ask men to live up to. And also, we think that female rule is a rather authoritarian ideal to aspire to. Is that really what we think would happen? Under authoritarianism, society would flourish? We do not think that any of you would actually believe this. But think also of what would be involved in getting there and staying there. So there would be some logistical issues, right? There would have to be some sort of a coup d'etat. Because it's not like all the men who are currently in power would just step aside if we politely ask them to do so. It's our turn. But then think of what it would take to make sure that once we are in power, that we stay in power. Presumably, a lot of oppression, a lot of denial would be involved. Little boys wouldn't get the opportunity to get a good education, to realize themselves, to flourish. Emma's and my case is that we need more female rulers, not because women are blessed with some sort of leadership gene, or because we will do it better than men. The reason we need to use positive discrimination policies to ensure that more women hold positions of power is because, as things currently stand, our experience of the world is profoundly different to men. We're vastly underrepresented in parliaments, on company boards, and lists of the fabulously wealthy, and we're vastly overrepresented in where it comes to being sexually assaulted, doing the unpaid care, being people whose views on abortion get media coverage, and so on. So in conclusion, no, we're sorry, but society would not flourish under female rule. It would, however, fare a lot better once there were more like 50.1% of us in the driver's seat. Thank you.
Eva Cox.
I have many bits of paper. I'm not even sure whether I'm going to talk about them, read about them, and so on. But I just want to start with the fact that we have been reasonable for far too long. I'm tired of being reasonable. This is a call to action. Let's do something about the fact that the world is run and being stuffed up, not necessarily by men, but by particular forms of masculinity that, to put it frankly, is giving me the shits. I want to sort of try and put this in some sort of context, because I'm old. I'm a lot older than most of the other people on the panel. And I can remember a time when we actually talked about society, when there was this idea of good societies, of changed societies, when in the post-World War II situation we had the welfare state and we had the growing society, and recently we've had all the fuss about all the things that Whitlam did for women. All of those things that happened, they were so social. I'm sorry. Currently, the people that are running things, mainly men and some women who go along with it, because we know that power invariably drags people into the process as well, are making a prize up of it all. They have basically, in the last 20 to 30 years, stuffed up all of those things we started in the 1950s, 60s and 70s, when we were trying to create a better society. They were all those ideas that came out of the social movements, out of the women's movement, out of the various other movements that believed a fair society, an equitable society, that was what it was all about. And then something happened. Something really nasty happened, and we can blame Maggie Thatcher for part of it. It was called neoliberalism. It made its appearance in the late 1970s when people like Hayek and so on managed somehow or other to convince people like Rupert Murdoch that really the problem was government. If only we got rid of government and started putting the market in its place, then everything was going to be all right, because we had this self-correcting thing that was called the market that was going to fix everything. I remember the AI, whatever it is, conference that they used to have every year in Canberra, when Lord Ralph somebody or other came up from Thatcher's Britain to explain to us that we now had to understand economics. And I failed economics 1 at Sydney University many, many years ago, so I'm perfectly qualified to be an economic commentator. I did actually have to sit down and learn some of the things so that I could actually talk economics. And I discovered that underneath economics was this strange being called economically rational man. He underpinned all of these equations. The assumption was that economically rational man was a self-interested little dead shit that was out there to make sure that things went well for him and maybe his wife and children, because it was Maggie Thatcher that said there's no such thing as society, only family, individuals and maybe their families. So we need to go back to that idea and say, how the hell did manage to take it over the world? I remember I invented a character at that stage called Eve, which was economically viable equity, and she ran some arguments with but we lost those arguments. But I think we've got to face the fact that society is not flourishing. We pointed it out. It is stuffed at the moment. Yes, materially we're a lot better off than we were years ago. Yes, we've got money in our banks and we're now terribly anxious as to whether we've got enough in our superannuation, which we won't have because it's actually not designed to give people, redistribute things, but that's another set of issues. But the whole thing is that we are now supposed to be independent and self-supporting. The idea of communally funding stuff, of putting money into a common pot, all of that is gone. How does that relate to the topic? It relates to the topic because neoliberalism is macho economics. It's about a particular form of economics which only values what we trade. It is all of those things that go with a particular type of trading set of relationships that are completely governed by money. Nothing counts. GDP only counts what is actually traded and what is actually sold. It does not count what is good and what is bad. So bushfires push up GDP, car accidents push up GDP. Altruism doesn't push up GDP. Taking care of kids doesn't push up GDP. All of those things that are social, all of those things we do for nothing, all of those things that are emotional, all of those things that are relational, all of those things that define what really matters don't get counted in economic terms. They're called externalities. We dismiss them. Now, okay, you know, economics doesn't have a dick and balls, but it could have. It would be a very good set of symbols to illustrate most of the technical things in it. It is a very machismo-type model. If we're going to create a social model, it's going to have to be led not just by women, but by feminists. The 1970s women's movement didn't call ourselves feminists because we thought that was a bit pissy. Germaine Greer reminded me of this recently. We called ourselves the women's liberation movement or the women's movement because we wanted to change what was valued. We wanted to put what was private, related, emotional, caring, all of that stuff on the public agenda and make sure that it was considered just as important as making money and certainly more important than making war. We missed out. But I think it's time we got back on that. I'm tired of asking men politely to let us have our share. They don't listen to reason. Macho economics is still dominating the stuff, and if we want to change things, we've got to give women a go. Men have done it for thousands of years, and basically they've f***ed up, so it's our turn. Thank you.
Jane Caro.
Well, on that bloody rousing note, I'm here to lower the tone. My mother, who is in the audience tonight, always says that we will only have true equality when there are as many mediocre women in positions of power as there are mediocre men. Being a determinedly mediocre woman myself, this low bar always gave me great hope. I hope that only increased when I entered the workforce and saw for myself the true depths of the mediocrity of many of the men there, including those who lead society. Honestly, I got so cheered up. It has always infuriated me that women are constantly asked to prove the business case for allowing them to take their places at the decision-making tables. Off. Why should we? When were men ever asked to prove their right to run, well, anything? It's worse when people, usually to justify leaving women or anyone who isn't just like them out, claim that they believe in a meritocracy. I'm looking at you, Federal Cabinet. Well, that's nice. So do I. But I see absolutely no evidence that we have ever had one. If so, merit is peculiarly concentrated in white, private school-educated, middle-class men. Frankly, sometimes it seems to me that the only people who have to prove their merit over and over again are women. I believe this may be because one of our unconscious biases is that we assume men have merit until they prove otherwise. Actually, it doesn't matter if they prove otherwise, apparently. We just continue to think they have it. My feminism insists, in fact, that women have every right to be just as lousy at leadership as the blokes. Flourish? What for? When's that ever happened to anybody? It is an added burden, in fact, to expect that women will be nicer, more caring, more nurturing, less bloodthirsty, self-serving or muddle-headed than the blokes. They won't, nor should they have to be. And unfortunately, it neatly places women who aspire to leadership in a no-win situation by trapping them between the old either-or binary view of women that denies them the full range of human frailty. Male leaders are allowed shades of grey. Women leaders? No shades of grey for you. You are a saint or a sinner, a Madonna or a whore, pure as snow or a festering cesspit. But as it so often is with women, any mistakes, any inability to make things flourish, for God's sake, is seen as an excuse by those who remain uncomfortable with women in power to paint her as a disaster. Clinton suffered, and if she runs for president, she'll do so again, from the same rigid dichotomy. When she was running for the Democratic presidential nomination, the level of vitriol and abuse aimed at her, as it was at Gillard, reached incredible heights. Not only was a nutcracker produced in her image, you crack the nuts between her legs, isn't that classy? But there was a Clinton toilet brush as well. Yeah, you scrub the toilet with a head. It was on sale. When she conceded graciously and accepted the position of Secretary of State, helpmeet to POTUS, she went from terrifying witchy sinner to rather funky saint. When someone's image changes that fast, you know it's all about us and not about them. That's why I don't want us to fall into the unrealistic expectation of women and other outsiders. Poor Obama. Remember all those people weeping over candles? What hope did the poor man ever have? Because it will just inevitably narrow their chances to get ahead. High expectation leads to great disappointment. It is sexist to expect women to be better, nicer or smarter than men, and it is deeply sexist to punish them disproportionately when they turn out to be just as bloody ordinary. I firmly believe that women have every right to participate fully in every aspect of human life. I firmly believe that women have every right to be ambitious and ruthless and strive to reach the top. I also believe they have every right not to be. I want to see more women in positions of power. Frankly, I want to see more people who are not white, private school educated, middle-class males in positions of power. Oh, thank you. Not because they'll be any better or nicer, but because they have just as much right to be crap and still well paid as the current privileged few. They're so nice on the other side. Yes, even Eva, she's always on at me to do something, and all I want to do is drink a lot and watch back-to-back episodes of Law and Order. They're so conscientious, hard-working, doing women such a disservice with their bloody striving and hard work. It's us slackers on the negative, or the real feminists being just as useless, lazy, rude, flatulent, vulgar as any bloke. Hey.
Okay, get ready to gird your loins. There's an opportunity. We'll have about 20 minutes or so where you can actually make your 1-minute speeches. I'd ask you to keep them focused. But before we do that, thanks, Ray. Just to give you an idea of what the poll showed before we had the debate, because then we'll be able to see the comparison of how things have changed later. So, before the debate started, here's how the results were. The figures were that there were 23% undecided, okay? The affirmative had a significant majority of 65%, with 12% on your side. So there was room for improvement, okay? Anyway, we're going to come back and we're going to compare this later, but let's hear what the audience has to think. Well, we'll start off with microphone 3. You got there first. So you're speaking for or against? If you just give your name.
I'm speaking for. I've got to declare an interest. My mum is on the affirmative team tonight.
Right.
But after hearing presentations from both sides, I just felt compelled to share my view, because I recently became a mother, and I now am the mother of a 3-year-old son. And there are 3 key characteristics that I've learnt that women have over men. Now, the first one is that having a 3-year-old son, I've learnt that you need to be very good at negotiating with difficult parties. And I look at Margaret Thatcher and the way she stared down the miners in their strike, and the way she brought the UK economy back on board and made it flourish again. And I think, you know what? Society would definitely flourish if females ruled the world. The second thing I've learnt being the mother of a 3-year-old is that it requires endless patience. And I look at the leader, the Burmese leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, pardon the pronunciation, and I look at the way she remained under house arrest for 15 years because she truly believed that that would deliver the people of Burma a better outcome. And I think society would flourish if females ruled the world.
You've actually used up your time now, I'm afraid.
Well, and the third thing, and this is very important.
The third thing about being a mother
She's my daughter! But this is a very important one. Any mother here in the audience would know if you've got a 3-year-old, you've got to be really damn good at cleaning up mess. And I look at Marissa Mayer, the CEO of Yahoo, and how she turned that company around from an unprofitable business to now their 3rd consecutive quarter of profit. And I think, you know what? If females ruled the world, society would definitely flourish.
Microphone 2. Now, your name, you might want to tilt it down a little bit.
It's a family affair.
Right.
I'm Jane's father. But
Who's? You're not
I
really.
wouldn't have announced it if I hadn't
your
had the
father.
Tchaikovsky clan.
Your father's
carrying
never.
on.
Okay, just let me check. Is there anybody here who's not related to someone on the stage?
But
Joe, Jane's dad.
I want to, as always, being a man, I must disagree with the women in my family. There are some excellent men, and there are some excellent women in public life. There always have been. Now, I agree. I'm not a feminist, I'm not a masculist, I'm a peopleist. I believe that we should have the best people, whatever gender, whatever one of 3 genders or 4 genders they may be. To me, the idea of, this particular motion is incredibly sexist. You're going backwards if you start to suggest that one gender is superior to another, which is the ultimate meaning of this particular proposition. Once we get into that, one race is better than another, one religion is better than another. I'm telling you now, one gender is not better than another. There are bloody good people in both genders, and there's some terrible people in both genders too.
Okay. Well, I have to say, it wouldn't be an IQ2 debate without one of your parents speaking. Usually it's your mum, but... microphone number 4, and then we'll go up to 6.
Okay. I'm an almost middle-class private school white boy.
And be proud of it.
The playground at my school is a rough place. Shirts are torn, shoes are ruined and legs are bruised. But a boys' playground is not a brutal place. Rifts are rare. Boys create an environment in which all flourish. Girls' high school playgrounds, however, on the other hand, are notoriously brutal places. I regularly hear mothers of girls telling my mum about how their daughters are suffering at school. It is not the case. Is it not the case that what we have with male rule is the lesser of two evils? Society...
No.
Yep. Your time's running out.
Society would be crippled if the female school playground experience was allowed to be extrapolated beyond the schoolyard gate. Yeah. Thank you.
I think there might be some students from St Vincent's here tonight. If you want to have a response, please come forward. Microphone 5. Oh, microphone 6 first, yes.
My question for anyone on the panel is a more serious one. Enjoyed the laughs, but we are suffering now in the world a lot of anger and torment and conflict. And no one has commented on the potential important role of women in ruling the world by the way they bring up their children to have values and attitudes that tend towards harmony. And particularly what's happening in the Middle East is a situation that the next generation of little boys, if they were brought up by mothers with the right mindset, may improve the world, society as a whole. Would anyone care to comment on that?
Thank you for that. We might just pause on that. Nicole, did you catch the question? The role of the mother in nurturing respectful children, including sons, who might be less inclined to the violence we're seeing.
Okay, so my main question there is, do we have any good reason to think that men couldn't be just as nurturing to their children as women are?
Do we? Eva, do we have any reason to think that men might not be quite as nurturing as women?
I think however well mothers tried to bring up small children, by the time they got to school, by the time they'd watched television, by the time they'd been dragged through the things and given boys' T-shirts and girls' T-shirts and boys' toys and girls' toys, that the chances people have of creating from the bottom up social change just doesn't work. We need to have the entire society changing. We're not going to change just because we change the way we rear young children.
Women have always brought up boys.
Yeah.
And they've stuffed it up. Why should it change?
Microphone 4.
Upon your introduction to this world, a tunnel begins. You fail a maths class and you can no longer become the next Albert Einstein. You are born a woman and you are less likely to be taken seriously than a man. You become a female prime minister and you get asked where you get your hair done instead of what do you think about the foreign aid policies. This belief that because women are more caring, because they are more family orientated, they are more likely to become better people that will lead society is incredibly sexist. We name ships after women. We name powerful machines after women. Women can do terrible things just as well as men can do good things. The belief that because a man is dominant, a woman must be submissive is an incredibly sexist, and it is as sexist as the belief that because a woman is kind, a man must be mean.
Thank you. Okay, we're just going to take a quick round up and then we're going to bring all this together. So we're going to take the last three speakers. Sorry, you're going to have to miss up in 5 and 3. Oh, actually, if you can be really short, we'll try and get everybody in. So the last one of the year. Microphone 2, just really quick.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I wanted to perhaps provide a definition for the affirmative. In relation to Nicole's point, I think 50.1 women in positions of power is female rule, and in fact at uni I got conceded pass with 47, so I'd take that.
Is that it?
Sorry, one quick second point. And flourishing for me would be doing anything better than we currently are.
Thank you. Okay, 5, microphone 5.
Okay, building on Helen's point, socialised women are socialised to be cooperative. Socialised men are socialised to be competitive. In significant part to and neoliberal economics, we have a society that's skewed towards competition. However, while there's a role for both competition and cooperation, we need more cooperation. In fact, you can't really get anything done without cooperation, be it a multilateral trade agreement or a wedding. By that logic, women, the society and situations would be better and flourish more under socialised women's rule.
Thank you. 3.
I would like to speak as a private school girl to the private school boy who was talking about
so take this.
Private school playgrounds. And I'd say that the female playground dynamic that we talk about, kind of, the bitchiness and the girls constantly attacking girls, is really a result of male rule and internalized misogyny that girls experience. And I think that what we need to foster in society, that something like female rule would perhaps provide, as male rule provides to men, is kind of women not hating women simply for being women, as men do not hate men for simply being men in, I don't know, does that make sense? Maybe not. Anyway.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yeah, basically.
Thank you. Well, who's going to get the last word tonight? Yeah. Just identify yourself, please, and then you have 1 minute.
I have to own up. I'm Jane's mum. And I came determined not to speak. But you're never too old to learn, and something happened this evening, something that I've been to lots and lots and lots of these meetings, and I suddenly realised that I'm going to have to vote the other way, because I realise that if women rule the world, it'd be such fun. I have never heard more laughter from the speakers, from the audience, from everyone in all the meetings that I've been to, and I don't only go to Jane's, honestly.
A devastating riposte to your daughter. Well, okay. This way. So we've had, obviously a lot of fun tonight too, but there's some really serious currents going through this too. The point made that it only does take 51% or just over 50% to actually exercise the final say in these things. And that fascinating question, which I think we will probably all go away with, about that notion between are we part of a society or part of an economy, and what difference would it make if the change in the balance occurred. Now, I'm going to give you the results in a second, but before I even give you any results, please thank all the speakers: Diane Smith-Gander, Helen Rosen, Kerry Jodorowsky, Nicole Vincent, Eva Cox and Jane Carrow. Well, there's going to be some disappointment in the room. It's been an absolute cracker debate. So, undecided. It was 23%, down to 7%. For the debate, For the debate, before the debate was 65%. It's now 44%. So, despite your parents winning the debate with 49% of the vote, I declare the motion lost